Right, good afternoon everyone. My name is Robin Harrison and I'm news editor for IGB, and I'm going to be sharing the latest in our series of webinars. And so for this edition, I'm delighted to bring in Melco and Bet Games TV for a discussion on how to build a strong product portfolio following a global pandemic. Because obviously, over the past few months, we've seen massive disruption, whether that's from sportsbooks, essentially having the major leagues suspended, and on the land-based side, having the venues themselves closed, obviously because of novel coronavirus. So what we want to do today is really just kind of go through what lessons have been learned from this, and maybe look at a few key trends in different markets, and so we're going to start off with a run through of each company today, and then I'm going to go into a bit of a discussion over more looking at the key lessons, and then we're going to finish off with the Q&A section. So please do submit questions as we go along, and we're going to try to address as many of them as possible in the allocated time. So with me today, we have Brandon Walker, who is Head of Business Development for Melco, and Richard Hogg, who is Chief Commercial Officer of Bet Games TV. And so you've got a bit of an idea of who these guys are and what their businesses do. We're going to kick off with a bit of a sort of introduction to each. So for this, Richard, do you want to kick off? Tell us about Bet Games TV.
Yeah, hello there, everybody. Hope everybody can hear me okay. Yes, I've been with betgames.tv for about 1 year now. Whilst I'd come across them across various parts of the industry over the years, I hadn't got to grips with their product until I joined them. They have been providing their games to the industry for 8 years now. They have multiple licenses and they offer a different twist on live betting and gaming. All of their products are presented in a live environment. They're 24/7, and they provide a range of lottery, card, dice, wheel type games, which are quite familiar in various formats. The difference being we offer fixed odds betting on the outcomes of those games. So as opposed to relying on RNGs, we rely on providing fixed odd betting outcomes. So if you're watching a round of poker, you can bet the price that it's going to be 3 of a kind, a pair, etc. So that is in a nutshell what Bet Games TV does and what our proposition is.
Fantastic, thank you very much. And Brandon, do you want to give a quick primer on Melco, please?
Yeah, thanks very much, Robin. Yes, I've obviously Brandon Walker, Head of Business Development at Melco. Been working at Melco for just coming up to 7 years now. Worked across numerous projects over that time. And for the last 2 to 2.5 years, been focusing primarily on business development and growing the business as much as we can. Obviously, the US being a big focus, but we also do work with the majority of the tier 1 operators within Europe in one way or another. And yeah, so I suppose Melco has been around from about 2006. And we have, like I mentioned, we work with majority of the tier 1 operators. And I suppose where we've got to now is we're not just a feed handler or a trade trade engine or a bet engine. We're a full end-to-end solution. That's all the way from data feeds through to the front end, taking in data feeds and sort of having our own feed handlers right through to the UI front engine. front end as well as our own wallet. So that's about it in a nutshell. I won't give too much away. I mean, obviously, as we go through, we can delve into a bit more.
Fantastic, thank you very much. And now we've got the kind of personal interest out of the way. Richard, do you want to start going through a bit more about BetGames.tv's business? Because got a nice kind of run through, so I was keen to get you guys onto this part.
Yeah, I mean, we supply our products to many operators, aggregators, platform providers across the globe. Melco being one, we recently integrated onto Melco's platform, so we're excited to go live with them. And our demographic of clients is very broad. We have clients in every continent across the globe and probably every country. So our products are well known, our games are well known, even our brand is well known. In certain countries, the brand is probably more well known than the actual operator itself in some instances. So we are now looking to increase our footfall of customers in new markets, and those new markets that we're focusing on now are more traditional European markets, such as the UK, the Nordics, Scandinavia, the more regulated markets such as Romania, potentially the USA. Once it starts opening up more state by state, we can get our products licensed. We're looking at LATAM specifically. We're going through the licensing process for Colombia, for example. And of course, Asia, various parts of Asia we've entered into and continue to grow in those markets, such as India, South Korea, etc. Obviously, with the COVID interruption, we've had certain challenges, and sort of we are now looking to, hopefully, as we come out of COVID, look to really motor forward in progressing our product and game development and client onboarding.
Okay, fantastic. And now, Brandon, would you like to talk us through Melco's business now and just kind of like chart the growth and what you guys are doing?
Sure, Steph, do you want to perhaps just move a couple slides on? Yep, next one. I think you can. So I mean, yeah, like I said, I mean, in terms of what a Melco offer, we offer a full end-to-end solution. That obviously being from a full customizable sort of platform, very modular. One of the main USPs of a Melco, and it obviously integrates with a number of other sort of gaming, casino, bet games being one of them, of course, providers as well, numerous other aggregators. And like I said, I mean, the way that sort of Melco started was built from the foundation up. We sort of started with feed handlers. We then moved into sort of trading capacity or trading technology, moved on to the bet engine, and then we finally finished with the front end and the UI. So I mean, and the UI of the front end. We've mainly been known for our sort of trading technology, and that's where a lot of our tier one operators utilize that. Once we did the deal with, or once we started working with BetStars, that was when we sort of moved into the full end-to-end solution of a sportsbook. Obviously, what they sort of have today is where we started with that, and we sort of built on from that to where we are today. I mean, yeah, complete flexibility in terms of how the product is delivered. You can have price per channel, which has proved very popular, especially again with tier one operators. And again, we're very much about the sort of bespoke offering. We're not necessarily just taking an out the box sportsbook and handing that out. we sort of pride ourselves on being able to offer a very bespoke offering which suits the operator's needs for that particular market. Again, we've got our quantum solution, which has obviously a number of components that fit into it. This is very much summarized in a nutshell. You've obviously got your data feeds which plug into it. You got your trading component or your risk management. We got your NATs, which is all the sort of back office functionality, and of course the PAM as well. That's very much in a nutshell. Again, some key milestones in terms of Amelco and where it started. One of Amelco's first customers was actually William Hill, where we actually built a sort of an algo for Wimbledon in 2007, and that's where we sort of moved into the sporting realm. We then moved on to working with Betfair, which we did all the back-end trading technology for football, tennis, as well as their horses and dogs. Coral was obviously a big customer as well, where we still actually work very closely with them on all the trading, especially around the football side of things, and they use our price per channel still today. Obviously, again, like I mentioned, the Stars Group, that was a big partnership, and that was when we actually moved from being just a software supplier to a full sportsbook solution. Touching on Baba, that's one of our biggest sort of African operators who we've been working with since obviously 2015. We've done a lot of work with them in terms of taking their land-based lottery and moving that into an online space, and we'll touch on that a bit further on in this sort of presentation. Hong Kong Jockey Club was actually a very big deal for us as well. I actually was based in Hong Kong for 2.5 years helping with that project, and we still support that today, where we built a very bespoke trading solution for their football system. We then obviously did the deal with Intralot, where they've taken our full sportsbook solution, where they are still utilizing at least the core components of our sportsbook today in their offering. Of course, you've got the mergers with Betfair Paddy Power and Ladbrokes Coral, where they also utilize certain components from those original offerings that Betfair and Coral were taking. And then, of course, the Sky Bet and the Stars Group partnership, where in certain countries in Europe, Stars have now switched some of the Amelco software into the Sky Bet offering. So that's very much in a nutshell, short and sharp. As I said, we do work with majority, as you can see, tier 1 operators in one way or another.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, guys. Now, today, obviously, we're here to talk about building a product portfolio that can withstand the disruption of the sort we kind of seen with COVID-19. So I suppose the good place to start when discussing this is really kind of very close to home. You know, how it has the pandemic affected each of your businesses? You know, what sort of changes have you guys had to make to how you operate, you know, to kind of withstand this situation?
I'm happy to start there, I guess. So when COVID first reared its head, I think it hit the whole industry by surprise, and nobody was really prepared for this, and nobody had any plans in place on how to continue its business. And a lot of banks and even trading institutions and so forth have full redundancy capability in various locations across the world. However, that still doesn't help how you actually get your staff into the office or into an office, how to deliver services, products. When sports betting stopped because there was no sports to bet on, that made it even worse for a number of data providers, sportsbooks themselves. And as a business, BetGames really had to react quickly. We didn't know what the status was going to be with lockdown. We didn't know how quickly that it could affect us. We didn't know how our customers were going to be reacting to this. So we had to be very proactive. We had to react quickly, and we had to decide how best we could deal with the situation. BetGames is mainly based out of an office in Vilnius in Lithuania. Lithuania was quite fortunate in that they reacted as a country quite quickly to the pandemic. They locked down. Their numbers were minimal. They tended to be from people returning home from overseas that were bringing the disease, the virus into the country. That said, BetGames made the decision to isolate its staff. We locked down the office. We removed ourselves from the offices. Of course, the dealers themselves, the live dealers, were not in a position to do that. Our offices are sufficiently big enough to stand and give us the ability to have staff situated at least 2 meters apart at all times. We introduced strict procedures for entering, leaving the office, being within the office. Our dealers are only on one person per one game. We don't have multiple tables for games. So in short, our options were quite minimal in that we didn't have hundreds and thousands of staff to consider. We have about 70 to 80 staff who work in the live dealing function. They work in shifts. They work 24/7. So we were able to work with them as individuals, give them the tools, the services they need, entry into the office, transportation to the office, and back again, of course, to keep them sufficiently separated from other individuals. And we were able to operate that very, very well. And in addition, in case a virus outbreak occurred within the office, we had a full team, a full redundancy, a full replacement team of staff who were self-isolating in their own environment, who were able to come into the office at any stage. We had full sleeping and accommodation within those offices if needed. So we had no real concerns of our business going offline for any amount of time. And fortunately, we didn't have to get to that level. We coped with our initial deployment. That worked well. We're seeing now in Lithuania that people are able to go to the office if they need to, and if they want to, indeed. Of course, the live dealers have always been there. We didn't see any outbreaks within any team members, so we went through that, sufficiently. And that's how we managed to continue operating without any failure, any downtime at all throughout the period to date. We are well prepared for a second wave, we believe, and we have managed to keep everybody working all the way through it. We haven't had to furlough any staff, and we believe we're going to come through this as a better organisation.
Okay, thanks, Richard. Now, Brandon, tell me what the situation was like for Amelco, because obviously you've got the logistical challenge of serving a range of clients around the world. So I imagine you're working across a lot of time zones. And then there's also the issue of, the most popular content is suddenly not as readily available. So I suppose two parts to that. So first of all, how did it kind of affect the kind of business internally? And then what sort of changes or kind of adaptations did you make to make sure you were also able to support your clients?
I think very similarly to what Rich just said. Obviously, we had to adapt fairly quickly and respond as quick as we can. I mean, obviously, with our head office being based in London, it was probably one of the last places to actually for lockdown to sort of be implemented. So it was one of those things where we all anticipated it, we saw it coming, but we didn't really know when lockdown was going to strike. So, I mean, from our side, we had prepared in those upcoming weeks. We had ensured that people had the ability to work from home. Obviously, majority of our staff already have VPN set up, etc. But we just made sure that everyone had laptops, screens, desks, whatever was needed to sort of to work from home and have that sort of comfort of working from home. So that was not a problem. I mean, obviously, yeah, we've got customers based all over the world. So time zones, I mean, it was sort of business as usual, exactly how we would normally manage it. So, I mean, again, similar to bet games, business wasn't really affected from our side. Of course, our operators were the ones, or at least our customers were the ones that were struck the hardest. So, coming back to what you just said, I mean, it was obviously not a mad scramble, but it was going through sort of the process of identifying where we could help out and where we could plug the gap. Obviously, sports, there was no lack of sports, so we were looking at new integrations, whether that be for payments or whether that be for games and content, whether that be for sports that weren't necessarily affected. So I mean, yeah, it was a lot of brainstorming, a lot of working through sort of customer by customer and identifying what was going to suit their particular market best.
Sorry, I just realised I hadn't unmuted myself there. Always a few gremlins in the machine. I was keen to ask in particular about Nigeria, because is a market that's predominantly retail focused.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, so from what we saw with Nigeria, obviously there was the lockdown struck them in a big way. Like I said, I mean, obviously agency is a big thing over there, as well as the retail side of things. We did see a cross sell of sort of agency business onto the online, and like I said, so we've also we took their land-based lottery and moved that online for them. So we saw a massive uplift in the online lottery side of things from sports bettors. Which is obviously very positive, and we think that that'll continue post lockdown. So I think in terms of revenue, some of our customers, well, particular customer in Nigeria, they weren't affected too badly, and I think they're probably in a better position coming out of lockdown with the customer acquisition that they've made during lockdown.
Okay, cool. And then Richard, I was keen to get a bit of an idea from you what BetGames.tv was doing for its clients, because obviously I imagine a lot of them are going to have an online presence, but what about the retail component for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, we have a significant presence in a number of countries, one being South Africa. South Africa was hit relatively late in the sort of pandemic wave, and whilst we were prepared, I don't think they were quite prepared. Their numbers were quite slow, but I think we all understood, especially myself, having relatives and family down in South Africa, we understood what could happen if the pandemic really got a grip down there, and they took the decision down there to close and lock down, and that meant retail. For all of our clients down there, or all of our clients who have retail. Retail is probably 15 to 20% of our business. And when that was locked down, that went down to 1%. There was a few bits and pieces coming through still, but in short, it was gone. So we had to help our clients who relied heavily on retail, help them as best we could to help them on the online world. And that's not a world that a lot of these people are familiar with for a number of reasons. It was a bit of a mad dash to help them try and recruit these players, to get their details, to help them, give them an online offering for when they were sat at home, but also conscious as well of how these people may be feeling, potential financial worries they may have. Some countries aren't as well off as the UK, for example, where furlough is paid by the government. So there's a bit of sweetness there, and you have to be sensitive to it. But we also understand that some of these companies have got stuff of their own they need to support. So there's a balance there. So we really helped these guys, try and migrate or get an understanding on how to migrate players from the retail to the online world. And that's not just in South Africa. That was in Eastern Europe. It was in some former CIS regions as well. So, and what we try to help them understand is that, you know, when players are on the online world with us, they've got a 24/7 relationship with them, as opposed to just coming into the retail environment for an hour or half an hour or how long it is. So it's a totally different relationship, and they had to understand that. We saw a number of online-only entities in South Africa, casino-only, for example, who had intended to go online. They didn't make that decision quick enough. And when the pandemic hit and their 9-10 casinos were closed down, they then pushed the button quickly to go online. As you can imagine, they needed to derive some revenues from somewhere. However, as we all know, getting online with any platform, any products does take time. And we've done all we can to support them and moving online. Because, you know, the severity of the job losses across their group was going to be, you know, in the thousands, and many of these people live from hand to mouth. So we've tried to support them as much as we can in that regard. You know, what we saw as a business when retail was shut down, of course, we saw some increases in online. We saw significant increases in online, and we saw bet counts going up by over 37%. We saw 500,000 customers, and then we saw, you know, a regular play. We saw a lot more regular play. People were coming, staying for longer. They've got a lower spend. They enjoyed the fixed odds outcome side of our product. They understood the similarities with sports betting. We've seen player retention increase as well by, I think, 33%. And what's interesting, as we're coming out of the pandemic, we've had feedback from some of our clients in regions where the traditional live dealer really exploded. Those products exploded, but the players, as soon as sports betting came back, they stopped. They left those products, went back to the traditional sports betting, so they've seen a big decrease in activity, whereas our product has remained the same sort of numbers as they were during the height of the pandemic as to when sports have come back. So it's been an interesting understanding of how our products compared against traditional live dealer, against casino games and so forth, against, you know, the lack of sport, and as sports has come back. So we're pleased to see that players are quite, you know, enjoying our product.
Okay, and so focusing on that, let's talk a bit about, you know, what products worked and what didn't. You know, how players behaved. Like, do you see, like, for example, Brandon, do you see sports bettors simply shifting to other sports? You know, it's like, is someone who's traditionally bet on the English Premier League, for example, going to then try out betting on, I don't know, you know, Belarusian soccer, for example, or have you seen more? Has there been more of a kind of shift in what they play? Like, will a sports bettor, like, is there any particular product, I suppose, is what I'm getting at, that is a kind of a natural shift for a sports bettor rather than just going to, for example, a sport that they might not necessarily have the same interest in?
I think you were asking Brandon that, but if I jump in from what I've seen.
I was on mute. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, Rich, I'll let you crack on.
Yeah, I mean, I was just saying that, you know, the feedback that we've got from our operator clients, some of them are obviously tier ones. They've highlighted that whilst players, when there was no sports, went across to certain products, they've certainly gone back to what they know. Which sport? I would imagine soccer, because that's the main one that's come back. But definitely anybody who had tried RNG type live dealer or casino games have definitely gone back to sports. Those who were trying esports, I would imagine, have gone back to sports. And I would guess the same would be of virtuals. It's a totally different experience. Gamblers or bettors like to bet on what they know. whilst they might have tried other things for the entertainment value, I would imagine, and Brandon will probably have better ideas of the sports betting side of it than I at this present time, but I would imagine they would be going back to what they know best.
Yeah, I think obviously each market has its different different sort of advantages. I mean, if you look at the US, I mean, there was a big uplift in live dealer. I mean, obviously that being obviously in New Jersey. I mean, you can only look at New Jersey because that's only where it is. And Europe as well. I mean, I've seen quite a big uplift in peer-to-peer poker. This is obviously just your standard sports betting players and where they've shifted across to. Generally speaking, you're not going to get many generic sports bettors to move on to RNG slots. So I think, yeah, to answer your question, Robin, the biggest sort of uplift would have been on the live dealer side and the peer-to-peer poker. And I think that's just because, generally speaking, sports betting or sports betting punters, they like a bit of skill involved. And also with regard to the live dealer, there's a bit of that sort of human interaction. It's not just feeding money into a slot machine. So I think that's why we've seen a bit more of an uplift. But I think exactly like Rich says, all the operators that we're speaking to, we're seeing those players who dipped their toe into a new sort of vertical during the pandemic when there was no sports, that they're moving back into what they know. And I think that was always going to be the natural slide. And like I've said before, I think it'll be interesting to see how much of this segment that have moved into a new vertical during the pandemic, operators will actually be able to keep them there and sort of utilize this as a customer acquisition tool. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I suppose all that data will start coming out in the next few months. Each market is very different.
Yeah, I mean, we had one client complaining that the margins on traditional live dealer were lower than the margins on our game, so they want to migrate all those players back to or certainly onto our games and back onto sports.
Yeah. And then of course you got the whole esports side of things, and I've said that as well. I mean, I think the pandemic has accelerated the inevitable with esports. I know it's obviously a big thing within the millennial side, within millennials, but I think you definitely get a lot of people who sort of have moved in to esports, and you would maybe get them sticking around there and betting there in the future because it's such a big stage. But again, I think we'll wait to see that data.
Okay. Richard, I think you've got some data in South Africa on one of our slides. So Steph, would you just mind moving forward a bit on these slides, and then we can have a look?
Yeah, we do. We prepared some data for you guys to have a look at. Why South Africa? It's because it is one of our main markets. It's a market that we have been in for many years. We are very well known there to such an extent that no operator would go live in South Africa without our games. If you go into any retail shop, you will actually see Bet Games branded areas. They're not just plunked in within Hollywood bets, for example. They are sort of segregated areas. People are familiar with our name or our brand. They trust us so much that even on a mobile device, if they're betting on our games, they don't need to see the live pictures. They know the results are trustworthy. We know we're trustworthy. We've been in the market. We were quite fortunate that we were allowed into the market long before any other form of gaming or betting, aside from sports betting. So if we look at this slide here, you can see our total average daily bets increasing by 37% from March to May of this year. This is online only. Of course, retail was just flatlined during this time. But you can see traditionally we had weekend peaks, as you would expect still. We saw a slight downturn towards the end of the month, for example, but in general, you can see a 7-day average is steadily increase. I think we've got some other slides as well, which will highlight similar sort of trends in that player retention is increasing by 33% during February to May. strong uplift. Obviously, the operators were delighted to see this. They had no other products available for the players to play, which offered any sort of fixed odds outcomes. So again, you know, I think this is something that I think most people would expect to see. If we look at our next slide, we'll see that the total amount of bets in South Africa is increased by 55%. I think, you know, you probably see a slight downturn more recently, because I think, you know, it's hitting people in the pocket. As I said earlier, people will at some stage have less funds, and I think this is going to be a global issue we're all going to have to deal with. But the interesting thing is, you know, to see people playing for longer with minimal sorts of spends gives them far more enjoyment. Again, on our next slide, we will see how our games performed. So the best performing ones are of our lottery games, with Lucky 5, Lucky 6, and Lucky 7. We can see how those perform. Again, steady increases on the two, but you know, substantial increase on another Lucky 5, which has always had the market share of those types of games. Again, if we shift to another country, we can see LATAM, again, how we can see how our games performed, how the uptake was great. Again, I think, you know, because the pandemic's starting to hit them now more significantly, we've seen a bit of a drop-off. LATAM is a new market, so these numbers are probably exaggerated. It's easier to have a high multiple percentage-wise on lower numbers, as we all know, but it shows that there certainly is an interest in our products and our games in all regions. Again, similar with Europe, we saw the same 37% increase in total bets during the lockdown period. It's still ongoing. We are adding new clients as well, of course, so I don't think there's anything here that you wouldn't expect to see with a product that was unfamiliar. What's interesting, though, I guess, is poker itself. Our bet on poker product, we saw a 73% increase, which is a lot more significant. We've all seen a significant rise in poker overall across the sort of the lockdown markets, I guess. Poker was, you know, I think for most of us was more or less dead. And indeed, some, you know, networks have even just about closed down. So people were scrambling to find a poker product. iPoker saw a resurgence. Stars, again, booming. So, you know, it'll be interesting to see what happens to those players once lockdown really is released. So, yeah, I mean, you know, as I said, we can see positive results for us and our product across all jurisdictions and across all products.
Okay, so we've looked a bit at what does work. So what didn't work? You know, which products do you feel were maybe slightly overhyped, or maybe didn't have the same impact that operators were expecting or even hoping?
I guess, you know, Brandon's probably in a better position than I for that. You know, overall, our product was successful. Obviously, some games maybe is not as successful as others. I would suggest esports. Again, it's been hyped up for many years. Yes, it's very successful in some jurisdictions. I just don't believe it's a product or a sport that, you know, a lot of people will like. I certainly wouldn't want to be betting on kids playing shooting games.
I suppose, yeah, coming back to that, I mean, again, it's one of those things where it's different verticals suit different. You see, when the lockdown struck, I mean, there's a lot of talk in the US around virtuals, and even in the UK and Europe to a certain extent, and people got a bit excited about it, which was, in my opinion, very, very overhyped. Like we've said before, you know, the standards for the sports bettors in Europe and US, they're going to be drawn more towards a sort of a skill game, so maybe something like peer-to-peer poker or live dealer or table games. So yeah, I think virtuals was definitely overhyped. yeah, probably esports to a certain extent, because again, it only really, not only, but generally speaking, it appeals to a certain demographic, obviously millennials. As Richard just said, you wouldn't find him betting on esports. So it's one of those. I mean, different markets. Then again, in Africa, virtuals are massive, but and I'm sure there was an uplift in Africa on virtuals, but it's just different regions and I think also culturally suit different betting behaviors and
Okay, and yep, so we've talked about Africa there, and we've talked about the products that worked, we've talked about the products that didn't. And let's just touch on Europe before we start moving towards a bit of Q&A. So I mean, so what's driving growth there, and what really contributes to a kind of balanced product portfolio in your eyes? You know, and that, guys, I mean, that's obviously our most mature online market. So what's the sort of mix that's working there?
I think there's I mean, you definitely need you need the full sports offering, of course, and you've then got you got casino, live dealer, and obviously bet games have come into it in a big way. And then again, I suppose it's like Rich just said, you know, poker was almost down and out. Is poker going to be something that's sort of being rejuvenated due to lockdown, or are players just going to go back to sports betting? I think in terms of a full offering, you're always going to need your sports, and now, I mean, more so, you're probably going to need a larger esports offering because it has sort of come in a big way. So if you want to be completely competitive across multiple regions, but I think that probably covers all aspects. And then again, you know, virtuals to a certain extent in some countries, but I think the full all-round offering is always going to be sports, casino, slots, live dealer, and virtuals. I don't know, Rich, if there's anything you think sort of would be added, added to that.
Yeah, I think, you know, again, you know, as not an operator, more on the supplier side, you know, the feedback we get is that, you know, virtuals work in some environments, not others. There has been a small spike, but certainly not as great as live dealer. Betting on cartoons is something that I've never fully understood or been engaged with, but of course there's demographics who prefer that type of experience. But you know, anything in the form of live, it seems to be certainly the way forward. Live sports, I mean, we know from, you know, all markets, everybody likes to watch something and have an opinion and try and beat the bookmaker. So I think that's always going to be the case. It's always going to be a better cross-sell than the world of RNG-based slots and so forth. You know, you've got to have a balance of products, of course, but, you know, going on a website and seeing, I just don't know how you pick between 3,000 slots. You know, it's very, very different world to sort of business, you know, of live and engaging and so forth. So, you know, there's a balance of having all products there, and I think there's room for everybody. You know, and you know, I'm excited to see, you know, how the world progresses after this, because we still don't know how sports are going to be played in some countries, and you know, what their participation will be like if there's no crowds. You know, we've seen in the UK recently, you know, the Premier League started, it's siphoned in noise and crowds and so forth, but you know, I don't know if it will give the people watching and betting the same experience. I would hope it does, and I would expect it to, but I don't think we'll know. And then we have that balance of that. It is likely a huge global recession is going to hit us. You know, people are going to run out of money, and I think we have to be conscious of, you know, giving players the opportunity to spend time enjoying the experience without emptying their pockets quickly, so to speak.
So I suppose it's a sort of it's a case of creating kind of more engagement around smaller stakes.
Yeah, I mean, for us, we see a lot of that, and because we're in some of these countries whereby people's wealth and ability to spend isn't as great as others, and we see people like to bet smaller, they like to win bigger. In terms of they're looking for those archetype bets, they're looking for combination bets, they're looking for bet small, win big. Of course, very rarely happens, but they get enjoyment out of it, and it's that feeling of what they could have at the same time as not emptying their pockets in one go.
Okay, that's quite a good point to move on to the questions, because I've got one here asking about for a bit more about Bet Games products and which ones are performing particularly well. And obviously we've actually got some slides on this that we didn't cover earlier. So so Steph, you're right just to leap back, and yep, here we go. And yeah, so Rich, just kind of talk us through a bit more about about the different products and how they're working.
Yeah, sure. Let me just I've got so many things. So yeah, we provide a range of games, cards, lotteries featuring your typical lottery balls, dice, and wheel games. Our most popular game is probably Lucky Five, which is a standard, lottery style game with balls and so forth. We've got 6+ Poker, which is a twist on poker. But the most popular ones are certainly the lottery style games with the balls, etc. We've got Speedy 7, which is basically a new game that we've just released probably 3 or 4 months ago now, which is basically you're betting on, is it red, black, red, black? You get bonus rounds, the opportunity to win a jackpot and so forth after rounds 4 and 7. So a very simple game, very easy for people to understand, and that is being taken up well certainly with most of our clients. But the old original games that we have, the wheel game, War of Bets, which is a high-low type game, are still proving very successful. People like the simplicity of it. They get it straight away. They're familiar with it. So, it's non-stop action. There's lots of bet types. The odds can range from 101 to 100, etc. So, again, I think familiarity and ease of understanding helps, drive the success of these games. So, as I said, we've got these games betting on poker and so forth as well. So, I think our games, we've got a good range without being inundating the customer with game after game after game. We've got a good selection of easy to understand games.
Fantastic, thank you very much. Now, just looking down the questions. So, Brandon, someone is asking for a bit more insight into what Melco's been doing in Africa amid the lack of live sports, and I think we've got a case study in this actually that's quite a good way of illustrating that. So there we go.
Yeah, no, sure. So I mean, I'll run through. I mean, obviously we've got a fairly large customer in Africa, like I mentioned, who we've sort of taken their lottery, we've digitized it, we put it online. But of course, we do offer them a full sports betting offering as well. With the lack of sports, we've sort of helped them, and like I mentioned, we wanted to adapt as fast as we can, and we wanted to be a partner, not just a software supplier. So we got our internal marketing team involved, and we helped them with their social media side of things, and we really helped drive sort of traffic to the site. And I'll touch on a few of those things further on the slides. But I mean, we saw the website engagement increase by 30%, and that was because we were offering more than just a sports betting platform. We were offering entertainment. We were offering quizzes to the public. We were sort of engaging with all the punters, and providing comedy shows and comedy lottery shows that were hosted by Instagram influencers in Nigeria. We helped with giveaways of masks and education of COVID and what it meant, and so we really sort of helped them sort of go out of their way to engage with their customer base. And we really saw a good increase on engagement on the website. We actually saw the average bet size across all verticals increased. I mean, I know it's a small increase, but 2%. The average session time increased by 15%. Like I said, due to the social entertainment being offered across the platform, it wasn't just a sport betting platform. We did see a 20% cross-sell from the land-based lottery players to online. Obviously, they got a massive base of land-based players, so it's good to see that. And again, since the beginning of lockdown, we've roughly seen an increase of players of about 10,000 per month. So that's been a great case study and a great sort of journey that we've been on with them over the past few months. And we'll now continue to do everything that we've sort of done during the pandemic as we come out of it. So that's been great. And I think there's a few other slides, Steph, if you just keep going. So this was some of the things that we did with them, and these were some of the initiatives that were raised by our internal marketing team. We did a weekly comedy lottery, we did sports quizzes, and we did some large money sort of giveaways. We're sponsoring The Voice in Nigeria, and again, a lot of giveaways, and it sort of really improved the brand awareness in Nigeria, the operator. So that's been great. I mean, this is another example. We've gone out, we've sort of accelerated the integration of new telcos. So this gives them sort of a new revenue stream of users or punters out there who use a different mobile provider or a different telco. So it's sort of we've really sort of expanded the user base during this pandemic. And things are looking good. So I think coming off the back of this lockdown, we really think this particular customer they're gonna be better for it.
Fantastic. And let's just finish on one more question from the audience. So this is focusing again on retention. So customers that have moved from sport to casino, and basically whether these guys are going to stick about, in casino, or are they going to shift back to sports? Because obviously that's a kind of an ongoing situation. So I suppose this requires a bit of looking into the crystal ball in this. But I mean, if you guys would speculate, what do you think this is going to be? I mean, do you feel it's going to be either gradual or a quick kind of return to normal? Or do you feel that, because you mentioned it earlier, Richard, how it's a very different experience, without fans and with the kind of piped in noise and as well in the Arsenal game the other day, substitute sitting under umbrellas. So I mean, do you feel that that's going to that is enough of a kind of change to sort of prompt a longer term change in customer habits? Or I mean, is it a case of everyone simply wanting to get back to normal no matter how long that takes, including in gambling habits?
Yeah, I mean, sorry, I'm not quite sure if it was directed at myself or not, but again, we only get led by what our clients tell us, i.e. the operators. And as I said, a lot have migrated back to sports as soon as they've come back on the scene. They obviously look at the margins. They're still looking into the data. That'll take some time to digest. And again, we still haven't seen all the sports open up again. We've seen a bit of golf here. We've seen a bit of tennis here, there and everywhere. And it's going to be interesting. The markets, the trading is going to be quite difficult. If you look at golf, if they've got, I think they've got markets open for the US Open at the moment. We know there's going to be players dropping out left, right and center. The markets are going to change significantly, especially when some of the the shorter price ones drop out. So, you know, how is the punter going to react to that? Maybe he's not understanding why their odds are changing, why they're not getting, you know, their bets laid and so forth. I think, you know, everybody now is just putting products out there. They know they've got to have a variety of products ready for all eventualities. And I think now is going to be the time whereby they're going to sit and analyze whatever data they have to understand how best to give consumers a selection of relevant products for them to enjoy.
And yeah, Brandon, what do you think for the final word in this? I mean, do you feel it's more profitable for customers to be in certain verticals than others? I mean, is that going to influence operators' kind of retention strategies?
I think it's one of those. It's Rich says that we don't really know until sort of sports back in full swing. So I mean, you're obviously going to have those players who've moved away from sports betting. They've dipped their toe in live dealer or RNG or peer-to-peer poker. But I think I think over time, or at least eventually, they'll all go back to what they're familiar with and what they know. But again, we don't know. It's one of those, we're sort of in the moment now, and I think perhaps in a few months' time we'll have a better understanding of what percentage of players who have moved into a new vertical actually stay within that vertical. And also the cross-selling aspect of it's going to be important for the operator, because of course you've got better margins on certain verticals. So I think it's probably a bit of trial and error, and operators are going through that at the moment. So I think we will see in the next few months.
Fantastic. Right, so on that note, that's all we have time for today, everyone. So first of all, a huge thank you to you, Brandon. That's Brandon Walker from Amelco and Richard Hogg from BetGames.tv for joining us today to share some insights and a lot of data. I think that was very informative. I'd also like to thank Steph Fleury from Clarions Ops team for making everything work, and then Jack Brown from our sales team, and Nick Brown from Square Nair for setting this all up. And just a bit of housekeeping. Today's webinar has been recorded, so it's going to be available to listen on demand on iGamingbusiness.com for any of the attendees to re-listen or share with their colleagues. And on that note, thank you very much, everyone, and we will look forward to welcoming you back for the next webinar. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks a lot.